So, greetings, namaskar from India. We were having some Kriya Yoga sessions, and now there's a little talk on, well, it's not a talk, it's a Satsang on Patanjali and the Yoga Sutras, which is, of course, a well-known subject to most people. Yoga has so much come into the West, so Patanjali is kind of known. Before I start the talk, I would like to chant an ancient Sanskrit sloka before we proceed. Om Sahana Vavathu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvina Vaditamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Shanti is peace. So, the subject today for this talk, it's a satsang, so some interaction would be welcome. But I will talk for a short while and then we can have an interaction. Now, the science of yoga is actually very ancient. It doesn't start with Patanjali or end with Patanjali. The science of yoga, if you want to go to the roots of the science of yoga, you can see it as early as 1,000 years ago in the Yoga Upanishads, which are fortunately available also in translation, maybe not in French, but in English, published by the Theosophical Society. So there are 20 Yoga Upanishads which deal with the science of yoga. And yeah, however, among the darshanas or the schools of philosophy in India, they are called darshanas. Now this is an interesting name, darshana. Darshana means to see something face to face. This is the meaning of darshan. So all the schools of Indian philosophy, there are 5, are called darshanas, which means something by which through different ways you see the truth face to face. Out of which the last one is the Yoga Darshana, which the founder is considered to be Patanjali. Which doesn't mean the reference to yoga has not been there before. Bhagavad Gita, which has 18 chapters, calls each chapter a yoga. So yoga is not merely a practice, yoga is a way of life, a philosophy, a spiritual practice, as well as a physical practice. The reason why it's a spiritual, physical practice is because the yogis, Patanjali especially, believed that the body and the mind are intimately connected. And therefore, to have a healthy body, a calm body, a quiet body, an alert body, is to contribute to a quiet, tranquil, alert mind. And it's only when you have it, according to yoga, a tranquil, quiet and alert mind that it's possible to go beyond the mind and touch that which is the source of thought, from where everything is started and to which everything subsides. So, now, the importance of Patanjali. In those days, before Patanjali, the science of yoga was scattered in different ways, in different texts, in different teachings. Patanjali was the one who compiled them and put them in a proper order and wrote the Yoga Sutras. Now, a sutra is an aphorism. A sutra always needs a commentary to understand, because it's an aphorism. A sutra is the maximum that you can edit when you want to state something. It doesn't elaborate, it just gives you one sentence, and then you need someone who knows about it to elaborate it. So there have been many commentaries on the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. The most important one is called Vyasa's commentary on the Yoga Sutras. There have been several other commentaries. Recently they have found out that even Shankaracharya wrote a commentary on Yoga Sutras. Now, we can't date Patanjali. He seems to be quite ancient, and at least I can't date Patanjali. And if you look at the way Patanjali is depicted, he's depicted as half snake and half man. Now that he couldn't have been a normal human being. Ordinary human being is fully human body. Now there is half snake and half man, which means probably the person who wrote the Yoga Sutras or who taught the Yoga Sutras, maybe they were written down later, was a slightly extraordinary human being. At least that much we can infer. And the snake has been a symbol of ancient wisdom for a long time. You see that the crown of the pharaohs has a snake, a cobra up there. It's a sign of wisdom. It's a sign of the energy that moves in the human system and takes you to upper levels of consciousness and so on. So the snake is a symbol of wisdom. Probably he was a Naga who in early times came to put yoga in order and teach in a proper way. Now, the textbook which considers Patanjali to be the teacher or the writer is called the Yoga Sutras. And therefore they call it the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. Now I know that many people refer to the Yoga Sutras and the teachings as Ashtanga Yoga. Now, nowhere in the Yoga Sutras has Patanjali himself referred to it as Ashtanga Yoga. However, it's a fact that it has 8 parts, and the 8 in Sanskrit is Ashta. So you may call it Ashtanga Yoga, especially as popularized by B.K. Iyengar, Ashtanga Yoga. But Patanjali himself does not call it Ashtanga Yoga, although as you go along you will see it has 8 angas, 8 parts. He calls it Kriya Yoga. This is interesting. We will come to that. Now the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali are divided into 4 parts. Important thing to note. The first part does not speak about practice. We have this urge to quickly jump into a practice without realizing why, where, what for, and so on. So the first chapter of the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali is the description of why we need the practice. Then comes the practice. So the first chapter is called Samadhi Pada. After Samadhi Pada comes the Sadhana Pada, which means the practice. Because you can't practice without knowing why you're practicing. You will get into trouble because you won't know where you're going, why you're doing this. So first you need to know what you're looking for. So this is the Samadhi Pada. It's an elaborate chapter on exploring one's consciousness, what the meaning of Samadhi is, why would someone aspire to it. After this entire description and discussion, then you go to the Sadhana Pada, which is the practice. After Sadhana Pada comes a very interesting chapter which interests many people more than any other chapters. It's called the Vibhuti Pada, which means what extraordinary powers are developed by the yogi in the practice of yoga. Many people are interested more in the Vibhuti Pada than even the Sadhana Pada. Now in Vibhuti Pada, the extraordinary capacity developed by the yogi, especially because through the practice of yoga, one develops one-pointedness, one develops a mind which has no distractions, and therefore we develop extraordinary energy and alertness. And therefore when this is used, things which are normally not possible for people with distracted minds who are dissipated of energy are possible. This is the Vibhuti Pada. A yogi, for instance, can quickly grasp things which take a long time for people who are non-yogis to grasp. And after Vibhuti Pada, after giving the warning in Vibhuti Pada that this is not the intention of yoga, but we need to go beyond this, because what we are seeking is Kaivalya, comes the chapter called Kaivalya Pada, which is the culmination of the Yoga Sutras, the practice of Yoga Sutras. Now Kaivalya Pada is where the mind of the yogi, free of all distractions, free of all contradictions, free of all tensions, reaches a state of complete freedom where it sees only one consciousness and no plurality anywhere. More individuality is part of that one plurality, which is one. Actually, in Kaivalya, one doesn't see the plural, one sees only one. It is derived from the Sanskrit word kevalam, which means only, alone. Now you know that alone, if you split it into two, it is all one. Alone is all one. So in Kaivalya, the yogi realizes it's all one. And when there is only one, there is no quarrel, there is no fight. Starts when there is two, including at home. So, this is the gist of the yoga. Now I'm going to start with the Samadhi Pada. Samadhi Pada, there's no point in quoting the slokas. In fact, I have myself written this book on the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, which they have given me in Kindle form, but there's no point in going into the details. But let me explain what Samadhi Pada is. Samadhi Pada is the description of the ultimate Kaivalya, which the yogi attains through the practice. That is Samadhi. Now, what is the meaning of Samadhi? Sama means complete equality, complete tranquility, complete oneness. And Samadhi is the state in which this happens. So, the whole of the Samadhi Pada is a description of how the mind with its pluralities moves towards the inner levels or upper levels of consciousness and reaches that quietude and tranquility and tremendous energy, which is not agitating energy but calming energy, where the yogi becomes free. This is Samadhi. Now, the second chapter, Sadhana Pada, describes how to reach there, what are the techniques. First, theoretically, it's discussed that you need to move from the consciousness of the many into the consciousness of the one. And it's also a discussion on the different layers of consciousness that we possess and how to reach the root from which the whole thing originates. And that when you touch that, it is a blissful state which when once tasted, anything else ever seems so tasteful. This is Samadhi. And in Samadhi, the Vedantin describes Samadhi as the reaching of the state called Satchidananda, which means the reality, which is conscious, not a material object, but consciousness pure, and its quality or attribute is bliss, ananda. Not the ordinary bliss that comes and goes, but something which is with us forever. This is Samadhi. Now the second chapter is Sadhana Pada. Sadhana Pada begins, as I said, Patanjali says in this Sadhana Pada, svadhyaya, Ishvara pranidhanani, Kriya Yoga. Says this, what I am going to tell you, is that in which there is Ishvara Pranidhana, which means surrendering to the Supreme Being, and svadhyaya, which means studying yourself. Svadhyaya means two things. One is studying about it, and two, to study your own self. That is also svadhyaya. Swa is your own self. To study your own self, which means to find out where we stand so that we know where we need to go. Okay? Kriya Yoga. Now, then he goes on to describe it as the definition of yoga, according to Patanjali, is yoga's chitta vritti nirodha, which means how to free the mind or chitta, awareness, from all the disturbances and contradictions that it faces. Tensions, contradictions, disturbances, distractions, to remove from the mind stuff all these distractions, which are put together in one name, which is vritti. When all the vrittis are cleared of the mind, chitta vritti nirodha, when all the vrittis or modifications of the mind stuff have been wiped out, then the mind remains in its pristine clarity and purity. And that purity of mind is where one understands that there is only one consciousness. So, this is yoga's chitta vritti nirodha. Now for that, thank you. Now, chitta vritti is disturbed by water. So thank you anyway. Our throat was a little dry. So, what are the steps described by Patanjali in the Sadhana Pada to remove the vrittis from the chitta? Now we can talk in yogic language. I just explained. The chitta is the mind stuff, the mind. And vrittis are the frequencies of different kinds which disturb the mind. Those vrittis need to be removed by the practice of yoga. This is what yoga means. And then goes on to describe what are the steps to be taken to do this. This is why many people refer to it as Ashtanga Yoga, because there are 8 steps described. I would say 7 steps, but the 8th one is the culmination. Now these are Yama, niyama, Asana, Pranayama, Pratyahara, Dharana, Dhyana, and Samadhi. Iva samyama. These are the 8 parts. Now what are Yama niyamas? Yama niyamas are the ground rules and regulations to be followed before you start practicing anything else. And the rule is very simple. If I simplify it, it means moderation in all life's activities. Not too much or not too little. Krishna describes it beautifully in the Gita by saying to Arjuna, this yoga is not for him who eats too much or eats too little or starves himself, sleeps too much or sleeps too little. Sometimes there is a tendency when you start practicing that you feel like sleeping a lot and you think that sleep is a spiritual state. It's not. So, it's similar, but it's not. Very similar. So, this distinction, if you make this decision, if somebody makes it, that I will not do anything in the extreme, this way or that way, then this is the middle path. This is what is meant by basically about Yama niyamas. But there is also the thing called ahimsa, which is non-violence. When I say non-violence, it means more the attitude of not causing injury to anyone. It need not even be physical. mind injuries are sometimes more powerful than physical injury. If I slap you, you might forget it fast, but if I call you an idiot, you won't. It will remain with you forever. Oh, this man called me an idiot. This can't be. I'm an intelligent person. How can you call me? If I tweak your ear, it will disappear in 5 minutes, but not this. Because when you say ahimsa, I want to live a life of non-violence, it means not to hurt people in mind. Of course, physically also, but important to remember that if you don't hurt somebody physically and you keep hurting somebody with the mind, you're not practicing ahimsa. Ahimsa also means that there are very many ways of living without killing animals for food. Many ways of living. No, don't say that I will do that first and then start practice. It doesn't work. So start, and a time will come when you feel, I can eat food without hurting animals. And then you can drop it yourself. In fact, it's been proved that nutrition does not need to kill animals. You can live without. So these are some of the ground rules. Then simple living. Why? Because if you have too many things, it's not possible to fix your attention on your inner development because you're distracted all the time. Here, one, there, one, so many things. So try to keep it simple. There is also one rule in the Yama niyamas, non-acceptance of gifts. Most difficult thing to practice these days. Anybody would want to make you happy by giving you a gift. And in my position, if I say, I don't want it, then people think, I must have done some great sin, which is why he's not taking it or something like that. But I still avoid as much as possible. Why was this rule given? Because, for instance, a spiritual teacher, you go to him, and then you're carrying a wad of euros in a packet to give him. You might think it's an innocent thing and a good thing to do, but I take it. And then tomorrow when you come, I'm looking for the cover. If it doesn't come, I'm not so happy. Can't be a real spiritual teacher, but it can happen, right? And then somebody who comes without the cover is not given that importance. The one with the cover is given more importance, right? So if you don't accept anything at all and say, fine, I want you to take the gift from me, which is spiritual. I don't want to take anything from you. This is called non-accept. It's a mind state. But then when somebody gives you some flowers, if you don't receive, they feel very offended. So do that. But keep this in mind that do not treat anyone who does not give you a gift in a not proper way. If you keep that in mind, you understand the principle of non-receiving of gifts. Plus, there is also that one need to one-pointedly pursue the goal and not get sidelined by any other. There is a beautiful Upanishad called the Kathopanishad, in which a young boy, whose name is Nachiketas. Nachiketas, if you translate the word, means one who does not know. Nachiketa. We all begin with thinking that we know everything. But unless we don't know, we cannot find anything, right? So Nachiketas goes to the Lord of Death, Yama, the Lord of Death. It's a story, okay? If you enjoy Harry Potter, you can also enjoy this. He goes to him and asks him how to attain the Supreme. He says, my only aim in life is to touch the inner essence, God, the Supreme Being. And Yama says, no, don't do that. I will give you everything you want. I will make you the king of all 3 kingdoms, 3 worlds. I will give you horses, I will give you dancing girls, I will give you the whole band. But I don't ask for this. Don't ask for how to be free of death. And this little boy, Nachiketas, said, if it's so important for you that you say you will give me all this and not give me that, you can keep your dance and music with yourself. I want only that. The attitude. Normally you come to a teacher and he says, okay, you're a good aspirant, here is the key, take a new Mercedes and go home. Would you want moksha or would you want the Mercedes? Probably you take the key and go home. So a person who seriously aspires to the teaching, who wants to understand the truth, is the person who would understand how to move forward in the system, and therefore all these rules and regulations have been put. Also, after advancing in yoga to a great extent, a person becomes more powerful in some way. So unless and until he has decided that he will not do things for himself, it's a dangerous tool to give to a person. It's like putting a little child in a room full of dynamite, giving a matchbox, and also teaching how to light the match. This is what happens when powerful politicians are so powerful, they can do anything, can destroy the world. Right? In the same way, therefore all these regulations are put in place before you move forward. So Yama niyamas are kind of over now. Let's not stay on this boring topic forever. Let's move forward. And then from Yama niyama comes asana. Now here is something very important. Asanas are postures. If you follow the traditional technique of Patanjali Yoga, Ashtanga Yoga, then asanas are also a very important part of the whole journey, or the whole science. Now what are asanas? Are they merely physical exercises that tone you up? Or is there something more? Yes, of course, they tone you up. I have been practicing yoga asanas from the age of 10 till today. I am 73 today. The reason why I move around like all of you who are younger than me is because of the asanas. And of course, neither too much nor too little. And not allowing any external substance to influence my thinking, and the practice of asanas. Now so asanas of course are meant for good health, under the assumption that a good body is necessary to have a good mind also. So they are interconnected. How? Suppose I say I am feeling very peaceful in meditation. I'm feeling very good. We might think it's only a mind state, it's also a physical state. Which means at that moment, the sufficient amount of serotonin and dopamine have been infused into your bloodstream from the pituitary gland, so you're feeling good. So see, the mind is connected to the body physically through chemicals. Therefore, yoga also deals with, apart from toning the body, it deals with the endocrine system, endocrine glands, which control many of our moods and movements and actions and so on. So, to give you an example, now you know asanas are very popular in Hollywood and therefore now in Bollywood. Because people like to keep their bodies nice and good. I'm not saying anything about that. But please also remember that asanas are not merely for that. Asanas are to help you tackle your endocrine system and to make you a better person, a calmer person, a quieter person, so that you go deep into meditation. So, asanas, therefore, to give you an example, suppose you get angry all the time. Many of us do, right? Not all the time, but sometimes. And it gets sometimes so disastrous that it completely destroys your life. Anger. What I say in anger, I don't even know afterwards whether I said it. What happens in anger? I say things which I wouldn't have said normally. I'm not in my senses. And if I continue to get angry all the time, then I'm not in my senses all my life. And if I'm not in my senses all my life, I'm a lunatic. Right? So, anger is something which may be useful at times to pretend to be angry and so on, but it's really not giving you anything. If you realize that anger is bad, it increases your blood pressure and your cholesterol, and very soon you have a heart attack, then you would want to get rid of anger. Also, it spoils relationships like nothing. So if I decide that if I want to be angry, that's okay, up to you. But if I decide that I need to look at the process of anger, what happens chemically. The moment when you say you're angry, the adrenaline from the adrenaline glands which are here is pumped into the bloodstream. And then you're shivering, you want to finish the other guy off and so on. If you're in Texas, you might reach for a gun. Our ashram is in the middle of Texas, okay? You're in so, there is an asana, specific asana. First you have to decide, I don't want to be angry, it's no good. Okay? And then if you, with that intention, do a particular asana regularly, I bet you can get control of your anger, because it massages the abdominal muscles and keeps your adrenaline glands in proper condition and soothing condition. And this asana, why I'm saying all this is because it's not merely physical, it has other connections. And this asana is Matsyasana. Do you know the Matsyasana? Anybody? Oh, what is them? Can you show me? Anybody? Matsyasana, please. You can turn that side so everybody can see. Yeah. Okay, now if you can't sit in Padmasana, it's difficult. Okay? Now let's just see this Matsyasana. These muscles are really completely tight, and the massage, the adrenaline. And thank you. I was worried you won't be able to unknot yourself. No, you can. Long ago, I went to Wisconsin to a yoga studio, and they called it the perfect knot. So I asked them, do you know how to untie this after? Anyway, so you saw that Matsyasana? I bet if you decide first that you want to be free of anger, this is important. If you don't want, it's okay. And then do Matsyasana twice every day, I bet in 3 months you would have got some kind of control over your anger. I'm only trying to demonstrate that the physical asana has a connection to the mind and the brain and to the endocrine systems, and there are several asanas. Okay. Now you have the asanas where the head is down, Shirsasana, Sarvangasana. See, normally the blood circulation in our brain is quite minimal, because all the time we are walking straight. And when we are sleeping, well, the brain has to soothe itself. So if you want to go into higher states of spiritual understanding, it's good that you get, also for your intelligence and your thinking capacity to improve, it's a good idea to circulate a little more blood in your head. One of the important asanas is the topsy-turvy posture. If you don't want to do the topsy-turvy, 2 years ago I fell down from the topsy-turvy, got badly hurt. But if you don't want to do that, well, the other solution is, if you don't want to bow down to anybody on earth, it doesn't matter. Go to your room and shut the doors and bend down when nobody is there. A bit. It will improve at least the circulation of blood in your head. Repeatedly bend down and you say, I'm thanking the earth. Do say what you want. Or say, I'm mad, I'm bending down. So keep bending down. Our ego is such that we don't want to bend down before anybody. Olden days, all these little church temples had small doors, so at least you bend down when you enter. Now they become big. So bending down is a good exercise. So there are many asanas in which you actually bend your head down and straighten up. And you will find that in most asanas, the spine is bent either this way or this way, which is to keep the spine supple, because much of the internal yogic practices are to do with the spine and the Sushumna Nadi. Then, what other effects do the asanas have? Physically, of course, they keep you fit. So, asana. So, I'm looking at the Ashtangas, 8 angas. Yama, niyama we have discussed. Asana. And then comes. Now also, we shouldn't forget that some asanas are prescribed for meditation. Because when you go on to the next part of meditation, you need to find a comfortable posture for yourself, sitting posture. And one of the most comfortable postures is this, with your folded legs, because it's called Sukhasana, which means asana of happiness, Sukha. And when you sit in Sukhasana, you keep your hands this way or this way or this way or whatever, but then not this way. So these are the sitting asanas, and some of them like Siddhasana, Padmasana. You know the Padmasana. It's so popular because Buddha sits in Padmasana, so it's called the Buddha posture nowadays in many places. So Padmasana. What does Padmasana do? It also has a physical function. The right heel is on the left side and the left heel is on the right side. Therefore, it applies pressure on the Ida and the Pingala, which are the 2 nadis. We will learn it with Kriya. And when it is shut down, then the central nadi functions better, the Sushumna. So these are some of the asanas. And the next step in Ashtanga, Yama, niyama, asana, is Pranayama. While Pranayama is usually understood as breath control, I would say that the prana is the life energy that circulates in our system. We control it through the breath. Now the breath is called Shwasa, the breath. But the breath and the prana are intimately linked to each other, so that if you can control or modify your breathing rhythms and patterns, you can modify and control the movement of prana in your system, life energy. Now, also, the breathing, the rhythm of your breath is directly connected to your emotions. How? Suppose you're agitated, very agitated. When you're very agitated, close your eyes and watch your breath. You'll see that your breathing pattern, rhythm of breathing is very agitated. Either it's going very fast or there's something wrong going on there. On the other hand, if you're calm and quiet and you're listening to, say, beautiful music or doing something which you really enjoy, close your eyes for a minute and watch your breath. Very slow, calm, quiet. See? So the rishis thought that if the state of mind can influence the breathing pattern, can we influence the state of mind through adjusting the breathing pattern? The whole science of pranayama came from that. And the fact is that if you even be aware of your breath, which you are not aware of usually, it's so important, but we are not aware of it. You can live without water for some time. Without food for some time, and even without water for some time, but without air, breathing, how long can you live? 1 minute? Hold your breath and try. No, don't do it here. There's no ambulance around here. So, it's so important, but we don't give any attention to it. So the yogi says, for a second, just be aware of your breath. Give attention to it. It is the most important part of your nutrition. What happens when you give attention to your breath? Breath slows down. And when it slows down, the mind slows down. Thought and breath are linked to each other. And when thought slows down, the mind is calm and quiet like a mirror, and it helps you to go beyond the mind to that which is the essence of your being. So pranayama, therefore, is one part of yoga. So there are very different kinds of pranayama, which we don't need to discuss here now. Many different kinds of pranayama for various purposes. So, pranayama, then the next step among the 8 angas, ashtangas of yoga, Patanjali's yoga, is Pratyahara. Now this Pratyahara is a very interesting practice. Pratyahara means the capacity to switch on and switch off your mind from anything that you're engaged in at any given moment. People have described it in various ways, controlling the, turning the organs backwards and so on, restraining. No? Pratyahara is not only restraining, it's the capacity one develops, the yogi develops, to fix his attention on something at any given moment and also withdraw it at any given moment, fast. If this is there, then you are practicing Pratyahara. Which means, when you are driving, the yogi is not meditating. You know what will happen, especially here in Paris. You're completely on the car. And when you are meditating, you're not thinking of your car. This is Pratyahara. To do what you're doing with complete attention, and then shift it to what you're doing next with complete attention. This is required for a yogi. Because when you're meditating and then you go out to work and you can't be thinking of that, you're working. Then when you put complete attention on what you're doing, you're already meditating in a way. This is Pratyahara. I don't have much time, but I'm going to tell you a small story about you know who the founder of Zen is? Anybody? Huh?
Bodhidharma.
Who said that? Bodhidharma. Bodhidharma was actually a monk from the south of India, from Tamil Nadu, actually, from near Tanjore. And he taught a particular brand of yoga which laid great stress on meditation. Now the Indian word for Sanskrit word for meditation is Dhyana. So he taught a particular variety of Buddhism which laid great stress on a certain kind of meditation, and he called it Dhyana Buddhism. They called it Dhyana Buddhism. He didn't call it anything. And then he went to China. He took this knowledge to China. And in China, the word Dhyan became Chan. And then it went to Japan, and in the language, the guttural expression Chan became Zen. So it became Dhyana Buddhism, became Zen Buddhism. It's okay, it doesn't matter where it operates, but Zen. Now this great Bodhidharma, I don't know, nobody took photographs then, no cameras, but you may find some pictures of Bodhidharma. Looks very tough. He has a mustache like this. It stares, scary kind of part. Anyway, so Bodhidharma, when he was in China, living on the top of a hill, away from the crowd, unknown, there was no internet, no YouTubes, no advertisement. He was living alone on top of the hill. So one day 3 youngsters, young people went to see Bodhidharma and perhaps receive the teachings of Zen and attain Satori. Satori is the highest state of, like the Dzogchen. So they went to him. So they couldn't find the address, of course. No Google Maps. They searched, and finally, after many days of intense search, they reached. And when they reached, with their clothes torn and so on, Bodhidharma was supper time, so he was drinking soup in a wooden bowl. So they went to him and said, "Sir, we have come from such a far distance, this. We suffered, we have found you. Please teach us Zen, how to attain Satori." Bodhidharma said, "I am drinking my soup." So we got very agitated. They said, "What is this? We are asking for something lofty and he's drinking his soup." So then he called somebody and said, "Give them their soup." So they ended up with a bowl and soup. And then they thought, anyway, we are hungry, so they started. Then they stopped in the middle and they said, "What is this? We wanted Zen, not soup." So they stopped and they said, "Sir, please give us Zen, teach us how to attain Satori." Bodhidharma said, "I'm drinking my soup." So they said, "We are also drinking our soup." So he stopped. He had finished by then, so he put his bowl aside. And he said, "This is the problem. You are drinking your soup and thinking of Zen. I am drinking my soup, I am drinking my soup, I am drinking my soup. This is Zen." I'm saying this to explain about Pratyahara. And then when you finished, something else. Not half mind here, half mind there. So this is the practice of Pratyahara. So Yama, niyama, asana, pranayama, Pratyahara. Then there is Dharana. When you practice all these things, then you begin to know how to practice Dharana. Dharana is one-pointed attention, either on your inner mind, or on a symbol, or on a sound to the exclusion of everything else, or on an image, or even on a word. Complete one-pointed attention is called Dharana. The next one is Dhyana. Now, Dhyana is meditation generally translated, but the problem is, if you say I am meditating, you are not meditating. Why? Because there are two places. One is saying I am meditating, the other there is meditation, there is a split. So, meditation is, Dhyana is something that comes naturally when you have one pointed attention called Dharana. You can say I am doing Dharana, you cannot say I am doing Dhyana, because Dhyana is a natural state of no effort which comes when your attention is one pointed and when the mind is clear and calm. This is Dhyana. And what happens in Dhyana? Samadhi, which is the high spiritual state, highest spiritual realization, which takes place when there is no meditator, there is no meditated upon something, there is only meditation. The meditator is so absorbed in that there is no more the meditator, there is only the meditation. Or rather, the observer and what is being observed cease to exist as two entities. The observer is the observed. This is Samadhi. So these are the Ashtanga Yoga, Ashtangas, the 8 angas described by Patanjali in his Ashtanga Yoga. When Samadhi takes place, then the mind has become so calm and quiet and tranquil, and therefore no dissipation of energies, and alert and sharp, so that you begin to have some extraordinary capacities which are not normal to others. But then you are not too interested in it, so you move forward and then go to the state called Kaivalya, where you see everything as one and there is no difference. This is the culmination of the practice of Ashtanga Yoga of Patanjali. Now, this is the whole in a nutshell. If you want to study the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, it will take several days, because you have to go from one sutra to another, understand what is being said. It is very deep. But I'm just trying to put it in a nutshell. just to inspire you to awaken your interest in studying it. And then you can do on your own. It will take several days. So, since we have attained Kaivalya, we should stop now. Thank you. Now, it's a little bit of time we can have. If you have any doubts to ask me, discuss, we are open to it. What is that? Oh, okay. No, you can pass the paper to me and then I can check it and see what can be answered in the time available. Somebody can collect those papers, please, and give them to me. Let them. I'll try my best, how much I can handle. Not too much and not too little. Following the Yama niyamas. That's quite a bit. Should I start from this side or this side? $1 million question. Yeah, I got a nice question. Patanjali's Yoga Sutras explain very well how to raise one's individual consciousness to very high levels. How can we use these teachings to raise a group's collective consciousness to help us to better face today's challenges that's threatening humanity? Yes, good. This is a good, important question also actually, that humanity is being threatened, there is no doubt, and that we can do something about it. I think there is a possibility. So to raise collective consciousness, first we have to raise our consciousness individually, because a collective is a group of individuals, right? So if there is a change in an individual, and that change is remarkable and strong, then it is easy to change others around us. We should share our thoughts, of course, as groups, and we should get people together and practice together to raise their collective consciousness. However, remember that according to the yogic philosophy, ultimately there is only one, the ultimate essence. And therefore, if one change happens in one place, it should reflect on the other side. Now for that, the individual who wants to bring about the change must be strong enough to do that. His individual awareness must have raised to such an extent that influences the other. So I would say that the first step is to change ourselves. And then you will see that you don't even have to try to change somebody. The person who is with you will begin to sense that there is a change, and change will begin to happen. When this happens on a larger scale, then the collective consciousness is raised. On the practical side, it's a good idea to sit together and meditate or practice. I don't know which side is first. Don't know the beginning or the end, but I'll read from whichever part appeals to me. It starts like this. I don't see lights. I won't reveal who, please don't worry. I don't see lights or any colors while performing Kriya. Very good. Is that a complaint? No problem. It's not that you do Kriya to see lights and all that, so don't worry about it. If you do, that's okay too. But I feel tingling in my back and heaviness in my head. Good. Seriously, tingling in the back is what do you call it? Indication that something is happening in your spine. Heaviness in the head will disappear after a while, not to worry about it. I cannot control my emotions for the love of the divine. that emotions are allowed. The temporal things that the emotions should be brought under control. If this is happening, I would say it's wonderful. Then, here are some serious questions. While living in this subjective world, do you think it's a subjective world or an objective world? Anyway, is being a witness of our own actions equal to the same as meditation? In a way, yes. But that should not stop you from actually sitting down and spending some time in meditation. But even in life, to watch your own actions and figure out why you're doing it, the reason why you're doing it, is an important addition to your sitting down and meditating. Then it becomes a constant meditation. The basic thing is, while you act, to question your motive. Why am I doing this? Is it for self-glorification or is it for something useful? It's a good question to ask. So this is one way of meditating also. However, that shouldn't stop you from spending some time in quiet meditation regularly. It will help you also to do that. So does it go hand in hand with the practice of Kriya Yoga? Yes, if you are practicing Kriya Yoga, it goes hand in hand. But there is a small phrase which says attached but detached. If you are attached to something which is more important, you automatically detach from something that is less important. Let's put it that way. Everybody has some attachment, yes. If you are attached to the higher, then you may not be so attached to the lower. This one question on the top I have answered already. Does living in this subjective world, subjective, is this the same person? No. Handwriting is different. Or are you writing two different hands? Again, same thing is that I do not see any colors, so I cannot control my emotions. I think there's one person with two personalities. All this we have discussed, but there are a couple of things which are not, so it's not the same person. I feel a lot of heat in the body, which is a good sign as far as Kriya is concerned. We have been told to practice more Kriya in winter and less in summer because it builds up the heat, yes. I keep as much as possible, or rather occasionally chant the mantra. Definitely sit down and chant the mantra you got today for a period of time, but you also continue to chant when you're working. Keep it in mind, it doesn't matter. It's a good thing to keep chanting the mantra, but when you keep chanting the mantra, let your attention not shift to the mantra, especially when you're driving and so on. When my Kundalini is awakened, now in brackets Kundalini is mentioned, as awakened is mentioned. So I don't know exactly, probably yes or no. Or the question is, when my Kundalini energy is awakened or activated, or I feel a strong cosmic spiritual connection in my body, why do I cry or have tears? It's a good sign. It's not you're crying not because you're suffering, you're crying because your emotions are coming out in a good way. There is no harm in crying, and there is not when you're walking around, but there's no harm when you're heightened meditation, when your energy is high, to shed tears or to cry. There is no harm. In fact, it would be nice if you cry sometimes. Crying washes out all the poisons in your system through the tears, you know. If you never cry, a person who never cries, I think is a very hard-hearted person. You need not necessarily shed tears, but sometimes you see some suffering and you cry, that means you are better. You are spiritually inclined and you are moving forward. So don't worry about the crying, but disguise it when you in public as much as possible. Don't get a name as that crying person. According to the niyamas, we are to practice ahimsa, okay? That is a bit difficult to do, agreed. When the consequence of my action is not very clear. You have to check and see, look at the consequence of your action. Make it more clear to yourself. It is not necessarily non-violence, but not hurting others, which is even more difficult. Yes, it is difficult. If you are choosing a difficult path, I agree. Because I do not know if saying no to someone hurts them. You have to check on that. If saying no to somebody hurts them, you try to find ways to gently say no. I have no other way to explain this to you. How should I understand and practice non-violence or not hurting others? So we have discussed that. While you practice non-violence and not trying to hurt others, if you agree with everything that somebody says and you don't want to say no, that is not the way to practice non-violence. You stick to your guts, but find gentle ways of saying no. How to get rid of anxiety and fear of disease? Is there any specific yoga techniques for that? Yes, deep breathing, calm breathing can help you free yourself from anxiety. And if you want a technique, just sit down quietly. As you breathe in and breathe out, watch your breath. Give complete attention to your breathing. Do it for 10 minutes. And then you will see how your mind is free of anxiety. Not in one day, it will take several days to do that, to get into practice, to be free of anxiety. But first also look at the root reason for your anxiety and try to tweak that first. Try to solve that. There must be some reason why you're anxious. Okay? The specific yoga technique which you ask for is complete breathing in and out slowly with total awareness. Awareness meaning be aware of your breath going in and be aware of your breath going out. How to get deep sleep in challenging times? Yes? When you lie down on your bed to sleep, fix your attention again on your breath. Don't think I want to sleep. Say I'm fixing my attention on my breath. Don't even say I want to sleep. Okay? And as you watch your breath going in and out, you will find that it slows down after a while. And then you will drift into sleep. If you're already taking medicines to sleep, it may take longer time to work. But slowly, as you go to sleep, one day try without your tablet and see what happens. Just lie down and watch your breath. Don't even say, trying to sleep. I'm just watching my breath. Sleep has to overtake you. If you pursue sleep, it will run away from you. Pretend that I'm not concerned. I'm just watching my sleep will come. This is one technique. What happened? Are you okay?
Yes.
Now it's time for that. I'm sorry. There are some more questions, but I don't think. Some of these questions apply to me, but. So, thank you very much, and get my email, and those questions which were not answered, please email me, and I will certainly try and answer them whenever I can, because I get no less than 200-300 emails every day. But don't get upset if you don't get an immediate answer. I'll surely answer them. And sometimes it happens that even if I don't answer them, it kind of sorts itself out. So wait for a while patiently. Hmm? Thank you very much, and please read the Yoga Sutras. Get a copy of the Yoga Sutras so that you get more understanding of this. We couldn't have done it in half an hour, but we tried our best. Thank you very much.